Hello, welcome to MLOps Minutes. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction to Git, and we're going to make our first pull request. The idea is the same, not to go into all the details because Git is an extremely rich tool that can take a long time to learn. At the start of a project, it may not be important to have a very clean history. On the other hand, once you're in production and probably have thousands of users a day, it's going to become very important to control your history, because in the event of an incident, you're going to be able to very simply diagnose what happened. And what we want, I remind you, is that on the main branch, which must always be producible, we want a functional modification request to be associated with a set of file modification histories. We'll go back to Git, and by default, on GitHub, GitHub displays the main branch of the project. We can see here that there are 23 commits, and you can look at one commit, for example, a history point, and here you can see all the changes that have been made to this commit. It's really interesting. To work, we have a Kanban. We're going to make a first task, which is very simple, and that is to enforce certain code constraints, so a little code quality, on the extraction.py file, which is in the package directory. Here we can see that it's associated with an issue on ID 14th. So what we're going to do is go to our Git repository. I'll do a Git status to find out where I am. So right now I'm on the main branch, and I'll issue a git pull command to retrieve changes, i.e. On the remote branch, which is on GitHub. I'll retrieve changes if a colleague has made modifications while I was away. So I've retrieved all the changes, and now I'm going to create a branch locally on that will allow me to work. So I'm going to call it refactor extraction. So I've written the git checkout B command to create a branch B and call it refactor extraction. So now I have a branch, and now in my file I can see that there's my editor. There are lints that don't fit. For example, if I look, it's telling me to put 2 lines of space instead of 1, so that's what I do. Now that I've made this modification, I can see that my file has turned blue, and I'm going to tell Git that I want to trace this modification. So I'd have to do a git add, and then the path to this file. I can also do git add point to say that I want to look at all the files that have been affected. So if I do the point, it selects all the files. A git status, so I can see that we're now tracking modifications to this file, which is in the extraction package. I can now create a history point by doing a git commit. But here I'm going to put a comment, so I'm going to put refactor extraction code lint. I've improved the lint code. So now I've made a history point, I've made a commit, but this commit only exists locally, which means that if I go to GitHub, you can see the list of my branches here, and I can see that I don't have a branch called refactor extraction. So what I have to do is do a git status. So now I've got nothing to commit. I've committed everything I'm going to want to push, so I do a git push the code on my remote branch. Since my remote branch hasn't been created yet, I have to do a git push set upstream origin refactor extraction. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to create my branch on the remote Git, so on GitHub. And now if I refresh here, I'll see my branch appeared. And it's just in time because GitHub suggests I create a new pull request. That's fine. I'll create a pull request. And now I can benefit from the validation of my colleagues and the automatic validation of the CI/CD. But I'm going to do a bit more than that. My extraction.py file here. My editor may tell me that there are other things to clean up, so what I'm going to do is Alt-Enter. I'm going to reformat the whole file so that it modifies a little more code, so that it upgrades a little more the way how it should be done. I'll do another git add. So I'm going to redo a git commit on this branch. I'm going to change the commit name. I'm just going to do a code lint. And then I'll do a git push to push this commit to my remote branch. If I don't do a git push, I won't get it. So I'll wait. So this pushes my commit. So now I'll find two associated commits. And in the changes that I can modify, you can see that there are actually more changes than the very first one. On my very first history point, I had that a space had normally been added. So now, let's imagine that my CI/CD has told me that everything's fine and that my colleagues have validated the Apple request. Well, that's not the case. I can't simulate it. So I'm going to force the merge, and then I can merge my code on the main branch. So I have two solutions that I'm going to present to you today. I can create a merge commit, or I can create a squash on merge. So what happens if I click on create a merge commit? We'll do a little drawing. So I've got my main branch, which is main. With nice writing, and I've got little circles which represent my commits. We've created a branch here. Well, I'm not going to write the full name, but I've created my branch, and I've created two new commits. If I do a merge commit, what's going to happen is I've changed the color. I'm going to get a nice pink color. It's going to take my two commits and apply them to main, like this. But that's not really what I want. What I'd like is to have a single history point for each card in my Kanban, representing the entire history. So I'm going to create something simpler, a squash on merge. And in this case, my two commits here will merge into one. And I've only found one commit here in the main branch, and that's exactly what I want. So that's what we're going to do. I'll do a squash on merge. I'll apply my modification, confirm my squash on merge. I forgot to tell you that here. I can associate my pull request here with my card, which is issueTransf, so I make a link to it. And I can go back to my task card. And if I now return to the main branch, so the main branch, I'll find my commit associated with my task card and my pull request. And if I click on it, I'll find a little ball of commits. So a single commit with all the modifications I've made to my branch. So it's really good. Now I'm done working. And the idea is not to keep the merged work branches, but to delete them so that things don't get too messy. So I'm going to delete my branch, and that's it. So our first pull request, our CI/CD continues to run on the main branch to revalidate that all is well. I've made my first pull request. We've made several commits on a remote branch. We've made a squash merge to end up with just one commit on our main branch. which corresponds to our modification request in our map, in our Kanban. And for a good start, and to start working, it's already not bad to do like that. Thank you and see you soon for future videos.